You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
Fargo, the new virtual assistant from Wells Fargo, makes banking faster and easier. Like this.
Fargo, what's my checking account routing number?
And this.
Fargo, turn off my debit card.
And this.
Fargo, what did I spend on groceries last month?
And that's just the beginning. Do you, Fargo? You can. In the Wells Fargo mobile app. Learn more at wellsfargo.com/getfargo.
Terms and conditions apply. Your mobile carrier's availability and message and data rates may apply. Wells Fargo Bank, N.A., member FDIC.
Well, hi everybody and welcome back to Who Did What Now, the history podcast that is not your history class, with me, your erratic host, Katie Charlwood, an avid TikToker and reader of books. Well, 'tis Shrove Tuesday, and so it's about Easter is about to happen. And, well, is it Easter? No, that is incorrect. Lent. We are coming up to Lent. Lent, if you don't know, is a Christian holiday. I think is it only Catholics who do it? I don't know. Anyway, so, yeah, this goes back to when, Jesus, the dude with the beard, kept turning water into wine. You know the fella. He spent 40 days and 40 nights in the desert, apparently, and resisted temptation, and so he apparently had no food or drink for however many days, 40 days and 40 nights, which I don't know, either this dude was some super survivalist, because the body can only last 3 days without water, but whatever. I'm not gonna get into this little fandango. Near enough everyone around me is giving up stuff like chocolate and booze and joy, and I'm here no. I'm listen, if y'all are gonna do it, I'll do it too. But just because it's maybe I should stop buying books for Lent, because I swear I went to the secret bookshop and I bought a ton of stuff. But anyway, this week we're gonna talk about Hatshepsut. Hatshepsut. I keep messing up. Hatshepsut, the female pharaoh. That's right. So I did promise we would go back a little bit. We have sort of been spending a lot of time in the last couple episodes, in the 20th century. And I promised that we would go back in time a little bit. And I mean, if you're going to go back, why don't you go back to 1473 BC? Or there or thereabouts. Decided we'd go back there. Oh, sources. Sources are history.com, the Smithsonian magazine, where are we now? Atlas Obscura, historyhit.com. I don't have any books on Hatshepsut, which is, and also one, minute and a half clip from Horrible Histories TV show. And I'm fairly certain I had a book on Egypt from when I was 12 years old or something, and it had Hatshepsut in it. But anyway, so Hatshepsut is known as being one of the great pharaohs. So here's the thing about ancient Egypt. The ancient Egyptian empire, it generally saw more women in power than, other cultures of the ancient world. I mean, in fairness, a lot of the deities and sort of the gods, if you will, of ancient Egypt, they were generally, a lot of them were female, and in general, ancient Egyptians believed and followed the wisdom of female rulers, to an extent, some might say. So, Hatshepsut, who I've practiced saying the name, because I'm going to mess up some pronunciations here. I've practiced, but I'm going to mess stuff up, and I know it. So yeah, Hatshepsut, she was the oldest of two daughters born to Thutmose I and his queen Amez. And Thutmose I, he was known as this sort of charismatic leader and this great military general, and also the kind of guy who takes no shit. You know what I mean? For example, when as a warning, content warning for this one actually, King Thutmose I is known for sailing home to Thebes with the naked body of a Nubian chieftain dangling from the bow of his ship. And so yeah, he's got the naked body of this chieftain hanging off the front of his ship as a warning against anybody who would threaten his empire. And I'll be honest with you, I mean, think of when that was. That is terrifying. But yeah, so this was the father, this was her father, but Thutmose had more than one wife. I should probably state that first. So Ames was his primary wife, and he had but Thutmose I also had these secondary wives. Right, so the way the pharaonic line worked, like the laws of ascension, the rules of ascension, things like that, these passed from father to son. That's kind of the whole point. I mean, they would like really prefer it to be the son of the queen, the first wife, the main wife prime of the pharaoh. But if there wasn't a male heir, they would go to one of the harem or secondary wives, a male offspring. And so even though it is believed that Thutmose I had two sons with Queen Ames, it would appear that both of those boys died before their father. So with there being no direct male in the OG family line, the son of Thutmose I and Menofret, Thutmose II, becomes king. Hatshepsut's about 12 years old, and she becomes the Queen of Egypt because she chooses to marry her half-brother Thutmose II. So obviously, as a male, he would inherit the father's throne, and I don't know if this was more of a keeping the bloodlines pure weird concept that they had back in the day. Yeah, so this is about 1492 BC, and they have one daughter, Neferur. I've pronounced that wrong. Neferuri? And they have one daughter, Neferuri. So Thutmose II dies young, about 1479 BC. So he's, I don't know, however old he is. And he has a secondary wife, and he has an infant son with a secondary wife. Seems to be a running theme. So yeah, Hatshepsut and Thutmose II had one child. He had a son with his harem wife, Thutmose III. I do not know, I couldn't find the name of the second wife, but anyway. So generally, Thutmose III, he was obviously next in line to become the next pharaoh king of Egypt. As far as we know, he was still an infant and deemed too young to rule. And in generally in the New Kingdom, the way it worked was the widowed queens would generally act as regents, handling all the general stuff up until their son or their stepson or nephew or whatever they were at that point, blah, 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 nephew or whatever general male heir they were, came of age until they were old enough to actually rule. So Hatshepsut automatically is assigned this role. She automatically gets the duties. It's like, there you go, Hatshepsut, there you go, have some fun, there you go, enjoy ruling, be good to the wee fella, no worries. There's her stepson, and she's going to handle all the affairs of state. She's going to rule for him until he comes of age. Obviously, smart thing to do. So this goes on for almost 7 years. And Hatshepsut says, nah, I don't want to be regent. I want to be ruler. So she assumes the title and full powers of a pharaoh herself and becomes a co-ruler of Egypt with Thutmose III. Oh, I should probably explain that pharaohs were generally seen as the gods in human forms. So they were kings and queens, and I think the pharaoh was the manifestation of the god Horus, if I'm not mistaken. But so by becoming the pharaoh, you have a godlike status. You are a god amongst men. So initially they thought it was like the Egyptologists, again, men of a certain age in a certain time, believed that naked ambition, a pure power play, just steely ambition. But now that there's been a bit more research into it, it appears that there was a political crisis that another branch of the royal family, probably some sort of offshoot of a secondary wife or a brother or cousin or something along those effect, was trying to usurp and claim the throne and claim all the power for themselves. And as a result, Hatshepsut was forced into the position of becoming pharaoh in order to protect the line for her stepson. But here's the thing, when Thutmose III comes of age, she can't just step aside, because when you become pharaoh, you're pharaoh for life. That's the deal. That's how it works. Okay, so fun fact, Hatshepsut is only the third female ruler that we really know of. So the first one was about Merneith. Yeah, so she was about 2950 BC. Merneith, she was the wife of Jet and the mother of Den, but it is it's sort of suspected that she was a ruler in her own right. One of the reasons why is her name is on a list of early pharaohs on a seal in Den's tomb, and so this would make her the first female pharaoh in history. The second is Sobekneferu. This is the first female pharaoh of ancient Egypt that has actually been confirmed. We actually have evidence of. So Sobekneferu, she ruled between 1806 and 1802 BC, and she was the last ruler of the 12th dynasty. So she only reigned for 3 years and 10 months, so it wasn't a long time, but she was the first that we really know about. So then there's Hatshepsut. So after Hatshepsut, there's the one that we all tend to know about, Nefertiti. Nefertiti was next. So yeah, Nefertiti ruled from 1353 to 1336 BC. And then it wasn't until... So yeah, and then you've got another 1300 years until the next female ruler comes about, which is Cleopatra, who I'm sure most of you know about, but we will probably cover at some point anyway, because there's a lot of misconceptions about Cleopatra and it bugs me, but we will cover that another time. So yeah, Hatshepsut is I'm going to be pharaoh. I'm going to make fetch happen. So Hatshepsut, she's a smart cookie. She knows that this power grab, if you will, is really controversial. So not only does she have to defend, why she's legitimate, so she has to get the family tree out, prove her lineage, and she also claims that her father had appointed her his successor, and not Thutmose II, which in itself was a bit of a controversial issue, but there we go. In order to really reinforce this concept of her being a strong ruler, pulls a Madonna and reinvents her image. So effectively, statues and paintings, she is portrayed basically as a male pharaoh, with the beard and the muscles. So yeah, the official sort of representations of her, she wears symbols of the pharaoh. So she has the cat, the head cloth, which is with the... So you have the cat, which is the head cloth, which is topped with Urias, which is that sort of snaky thing, the snake, the golden snake idea. And she wears a false beard and the shendit, which is like a kilt, effectively. But in other imagery, she was also shown in sort of the traditional female clothing and styling. And so she's in a position of power, and she's well, I need to surround myself with people who support me, people who are on my side and aren't total asshats. So one of them is Senenmut, her chief minister. Now, why this is important is the archaeologists that discovered Hatshepsut were, how do I put this, gentlemen scholars of a certain generation of the past. So they would see this as devious politics. These Egyptologists believed that Senenmut was her lover and a co-conspirator who actually helped her usurp the throne, effectively. And for what basis? Because he existed and she was a woman. And obviously a woman couldn't get that kind of power without being deviant. And they also saw the imagery that she used to portray herself as deliberately deceptive and devious, and I just... And the whole sentiment thing, there's like not enough information. There isn't any evidence to support the fact that he was her lover. Like, it's not there. It doesn't exist. It's like, clearly this woman could not do this on her own. But like, if she really wanted like power all to herself, she could have just, had most of her like under the thumb. She could have put him under house arrest, effectively. Pyramid arrest? No. They didn't live in pyramids. Pyramids were tombs. No. Like, she had him training. He was learning to be like a warrior. Because like he was destined apparently to be like this warrior pharaoh, which is generally the rule. Because again, you are a king, God amongst men. But yeah, so even though she dressed in the traditional male pharaoh regalia with the fake beard and everything else that came with it, the inscriptions on her statues and things like that have, they're generally feminine. So like daughter of Re. So Hatshepsut actually takes a new name, which we don't really hear very often. It's called Matkare. They think this means truth and soul of the sun god Re. And by taking on this name, Hatshepsut is telling the Egyptian people that she has the capability and the power to legitimately speak directly with the gods, as pharaohs could, that sort of way. And one of the ways they sort of proved this and showed their power and showed how great they were, is by creating monuments. Being a part of a royal family might seem enticing, but more often than not, it comes at the expense of everything else, like your freedom, your privacy, and sometimes even your head. Wondery's new podcast, Even the Royals, pulls back the curtain on royal families, past and present, from all over the world, to show you the darker side of what it means to be royalty. From icons like Grace Kelly, Oscar-winning actress turned Princess of Monaco, who the world saw as the ultimate good girl. She mastered playing a happy wife and mother, but beneath it all, she was desperately lonely. Grace spent her whole life working towards perfection, and it ultimately cost her her happiness. Or King Ludwig II from Bavaria. He was only 18 when his father died, leaving the crown to him and a duty to rule that he never wanted. He refused to lead, and used the funds from the royal treasury to further his extreme love of opera. But this choice eventually cost him the crown and his life. Follow Even the Royals on the Wondery app, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can binge Even the Royals ad-free right now on Wondery Plus.
Hello, Saver. Whether you're saving for that trip to the tropics or saving for an emergency, now is the time to take advantage of Wells Fargo's savings options. Wells Fargo offers savings accounts that can help you save towards your goals. So, what are you saving for? Visit a Wells Fargo branch or wellsfargo.com/save to open a savings account today.
Wells Fargo Bank, N.A., member FDIC.
So Hatshepsut's, her stuff was like the most ambitious. Her stuff was like very out there. It was massive in comparison to the previous pharaohs. Starting off, she's like, do you start small? And she's like, no, let's get bigger. Obviously. So she has the erection. So it's a great temple complex at Karnak, and she gets these 100-foot tall obelisks built. 2 of them. So she has 2 of them at this temple. This is no mean feat, because and each of these weighs 450 tons, and they have to be towed along the Nile by 27 ships with 850 oarsmen. Like, this is no mean feat. And she did stuff like all over Egypt, but the majority of the time she would concentrate around Thebes. This is like the centre of the Thutmoside dynasty. And she builds roadways and sanctuaries at the Deir el-Bari, at the Deir el-Bari, which is just across from the Nile in Thebes. She erects this memorial temple, and it's used for like really special religious rites, and it is astounding. It is her masterpiece. And let's just say it's kind of dramatic. So it's at the base of these limestone cliffs, and it is referred to as one of the architectural wonders of the ancient world. So there's a series of terraced colonnades and courtyards that appear to ascend up the side of the mountain itself. And it is like, how do I put this? It's huge. It's about the size of 2.5 football fields, but it's designed to look light and be graceful. Whereas like previous temples that were built by like her predecessors, they were always seen as like fortress-like, you know what I mean? So in this temple, there were all these images of Hatshepsut. Some of these statues are like 10 feet tall. There's Hatshepsut as a sphinx guarding the processional way. There's ones where she is in the guise of Osiris. She's sort of kneeling with offerings to the gods. She's and like a bunch of other ones, and then some where she's just like walking towards, and sort of other sort of devotional sort of stages. Like a good number of these statues actually survived. Some didn't, obviously, because it's been like several thousand years. But most of these statues are like, they're huge and they're meant to be like seen from afar. Oh, and at the lower levels of the temple, there's like pools and gardens, and there's like really fragrant trees and bushes, and it's very pleasant. It's very tranquil and pleasant and important. So most like Egyptologists and archaeologists agree that, so Senimut, the guy they thought she was banging earlier, he's like the official overseer, so it's his job to make sure this gets done. But most archaeologists and Egyptologists like agree that he was probably the architect of this. At this point, he's got like so Senimut himself actually has like 93 titles. I think he was originally he was Neferure's tutor, as far as I remember. One of his titles is like the Great Steward of Amun, which means he's in charge of all of Karnak's building and business activities. He actually has like 25 monuments himself, which is like really weird because generally non-royals do not have that. Like it's usually reserved for members of the royal line and so on and so forth. Just because he was like the big supporter, he was probably her confidant. You know what I mean? Side note, don't actually know what happened to Senimut because he has this like really awesome tomb and it's near Hatshepsut's in the Valley of the Kings. But his body was never in it. And we don't know why. But there was like a bunch of damage to... which is weird. But anyway, we have no idea why or what or how. Yeah, so basically restoration and building are like a really huge part of being a pharaoh. So in Thebes, she focuses on the temples of her divine father, so temples on Amon-Ra. At the Karnak temple complex, so she remodels. So not only that, she remodels that most of the first hypostyle hall. She adds a bark shrine and the obelisk. This is all at the Karnak temple. And Beni Hassan in Middle Egypt, she builds this rock-cut temple. It's known in Greek as Speos Artemidos. And she also, when it comes to her tomb, she actually extends her father's tomb so that when she is interred, they are going to be together. So she must have had, in order to do this, like you have to think that she must have been like such a daddy's girl. She's been like such a daddy's girl. She must have like really revered him. If she, like they believed this was the whole thing. You go into the afterlife together. I mean, to want to be that close in the afterlife, you know what I mean? So in general, the thing that Hatshepsut is known for, as well as like all the massive temples, is that like her reign was generally a peaceful one. So normally the Egyptian rulers, they would defend their land against all the enemies that were at the borders. Most of her foreign policy, if you will, was based on, not on war, but on trading. Although, as far as we know, there was a successful military campaign in Nubia. But trade-wise, they're like seaborne. They're, you know, there's trading expeditions to Punt. It was like a, I think it's, which is like a trading centre on the East African coast, which is beyond the Red Sea, which I think is believed to be modern Somalia. So she brings back with her ivory, ebony, gold, baboons, leopard skins, incense, myrrh. So not only does she bring back processed myrrh, but also myrrh trees. Yeah, so she brings back myrrh trees, and these actually get planted in the gardens of Deir el-Bahri. And there's supposedly still, like, there's like this withered old tree stump, and it's outside the mortuary temple of Hatshepsut, and it's sort of in this little cage, and it's this withered old stump is supposedly a myrrh tree from 3,500 years ago. But like, we can't check it really. There's like a wee sign on it which says, "This tree was brought from Punt by Hatshepsut's expedition, which is depicted on the temple walls." But we can't like check it, because if it is real, then it's, yeah, so trade routes are as far as Ethiopia, which is, you know, from Egypt, pretty far. So under the rule of Hatshepsut, Egypt basically prospers. They've got trade going on, they've got very few battles, you know, not so much bloodshed, they're building loads of shit, it's all going pretty funky. So we think that Hatshepsut died around about 1458 BC, when she would be in her mid-40s, but we're not entirely sure on that one. So she gets buried in the Valley of the Kings, and her father's sarcophagus is reburied in her tomb. So anyway, Thutmose III, he ascends to the throne, and he rules for like another 30 years. And just like his stepmom, he's building a bunch of shit. But like, weirdly enough, in the last 10 years or so of his rule, it appears that Thutmose III had started to get rid of the evidence of Hatshepsut's rule. And although like the original theory was like he destroyed everything to do with her because she stole his throne or some bullshit. But like, it was really late on. It was like in the last 10 or so years of his reign that like a bunch of her stuff was destroyed. Now, was it destroyed, or attempted to anyway? Like, was it destroyed to sort of, you know, dampen down and extinguish the concept of a female ruler? Or was it a sort of closing the gap to sort of solidify his claim to the throne, like make it more like a direct line as opposed to, my stepmom got it, then me, you know, that sort of way? And this is why scholars and Egyptologists and archaeologists had little to no knowledge of Hatshepsut until like 1822. And in 1903, Howard Carter, we all know Howard Carter, he discovers Hatshepsut's sarcophagus, just like one of three, and it was empty, like most of the tombs in Valley of the Kings. And like in a separate tomb, Carter also finds these two coffins, one of which is of Hatshepsut's wet nurse, okay, and this anonymous, and then this other woman, anonymous, no idea. And he thought maybe this could be her, didn't know. But anyway, so like in 2006, Dr. Zahi Hawass sets out to like figure out who this anonymous woman in this coffin. So basically they find this molar tooth, and the molar tooth is in a wooden box, and the wooden box says Hatshepsut on it. So, it didn't really take Sherlock Holmes to figure out that one. So Hawass and his colleagues, they compare this molar tooth to the mummy's upper jaw, and it's a perfect fit. So Carter did find Hatshepsut way back when, or maybe 2007? It was 2006, 2007, I don't know. And it's kept in a museum in Cairo, and a life-size statue of Hatshepsut, if you want to see it, one of the ones that did not get smashed by her stepson, is on display at the Metropolitan Museum in New York City. So yeah, that is Hatshepsut, the queen who would be king. The queen who would be king. There you go, Hatshepsut, the queen who would be king. Ha ha ha. What have we learned today? label your shit. You want to make sure somebody knows who you are, where you were from. If they didn't have her name on that wee wooden box, like, you know what I mean? Label your shit and, reach for your goals, actually. Let's make this a positive thing. Aim for what you want to do and go fucking do it. I think that's kind of the goal here. Yeah, but there's so much we don't know about Hatshepsut because of the destruction led by Thutmose III. Which is kind of a pain. She could have done so much, and we literally do not know. It's that's neither here nor there. So more books. Somebody got more books. The more books is me. I got more books today. There's a website, if you're living in Ireland, there's a website called thesecretbookstore.ie, and I just bought 10 books from there. It was so good. There was a bunch of books. I even bought a book on the Battle of Agincourt. The reason I got the Battle of Agincourt is because it's one of the few things in history that I have zero knowledge about. Zero knowledge. I know nothing about it. So I thought, let's talk about this. So yeah, I'll probably move back to the 20th century for next week, but I will go back to, I think, the Middle Ages. I think I want to do some Middle Ages stuff, just because I think it's fun. And also I have a book on witch hunters, which seems like it's going to be super exciting. Someone needs to stop me buying books. I feel like that's a thing right now, just stop me buying books. So if you liked anything you heard today, if you want to go and rate and review on iTunes, it would be super appreciative. I would be so happy, because then if you rate and review, then more people hear me, and that would be nice. It'd be nice to share the love a wee bit. And don't forget, if you want to follow me on the social medias, you can follow me on Who Did What Now PD on Twitter. You can email me, whodidwhatnow at gmail.com. I forgot for a second. whodidwhatnowpod at gmail.com. There's a pod there. whodidwhatnowpod at gmail.com. And also, what's the other one? What is the other? Don't get hiccups. What is the other one? Oh, Instagram, Who Did What Now Pod, and TikTok, Who Did What Now Pod, where I do little snippets and stuff. Although I'll probably start doing a few more Instagram stuff, because one of the things I talk about is the history of contraceptives, but I haven't quite gotten through all that yet. So the history of, but I also want to talk about the history of pornography and the history of eroticism. But TikTok's guidelines might make it really difficult for me to talk about. So I'll probably do it on Instagram instead, because that way, or maybe even, YouTube? No, maybe not yet. YouTube is so much more complicated and more hassle. So I probably won't do that yet, but probably on Instagram. So happy thought for the week. It's Shrove Tuesday tomorrow, and I am going to eat my weight in pancakes, and I will regret nothing. Although, don't be surprised if my Twitter is just pray for mojo tomorrow. I had such a huge, what I just remembered? I had such a huge Egyptian phase as a kid. To the point where my uncle bought me this kit with a plaster of Paris, sort of kit mold, and I could make my own sarcophagus. And I did. And there was this sort of papyrus type paper, and there was a whole thing about reading hieroglyphics, even though we can't really read Egyptian language per se, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, but if you have any recommendations for what you want me to cover at some point on either this or in video form, in my short form videos, or covering the podcast, just give me a wee tweet or a wee message, and we can talk about it. Anyway, this has been super fun. I will chat to you next week. I will talk to you next week. I will irritate your eardrums with my dulcet tones next week. Okay, everybody, adios, au revoir, au revoir, my friends. Bye.